UFC Vegas 47. Draftkings released the salaries earlier this week, but we still need to take our first look. You can call me Kunith, let's make some money this week. If you've been enjoying the content at all, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel. I've heard that if you watch these videos and don't subscribe, it's bad luck. I'm not going to tell you where I heard it from, but I heard it. But as always with the first look, we're going to start at the top of the slate. We're looking at Almeida, who's making his UFC debut against Dino Marquez this week. Now this guy is all action. We saw that in his Contender Series fight, and on paper, he looks like a solid grappler, which is important against somebody like Dino Marquez. If you watched Dino Marquez fight against Kennedy Nzechukwu or Mike Rodriguez, you'll notice that he's great at hanging on guys and finding their backs even in a standing position like in the clinch. What worries me about him against somebody like Almeida is that Dino Marquez does not have a great gas tank. He doesn't have great striking for that matter either. I think that Almeida is going to be too much for him on the feet, and he's going to be defensively sound enough to be able to fight off any submission attempts. So I could see a situation where he finds a big knockout, or he even finds a submission later in the fight as Marquez gasses, because we've seen him do that before, and he's 36. He's not getting any younger. And I will say for Almeida, in his Contender Series fight, he did get reversed a few times on the ground, and that's really disastrous against somebody like Marquez, who's a 6'6" jiu-jitsu ace. So I wouldn't be surprised if Dino Marquez had success on the ground in this fight, especially because of how often we saw Almeida get reversed and put in kind of bad positions in his Contender Series fight. So that also makes me feel like at 9,400, this could be a total trap spot. We've got somebody making their debut, -400 favorite against somebody like Dino Marquez, who it's kind of hard to gauge just how good he is based on what we've seen in the octagon. So it's a tougher fight than I think what the line is indicating, I think than what the DraftKings pricing is indicating, but I am going to have to side with Almeida, but I may even change my mind later in the week. It's just hard for me to pay such a premium for somebody who's making their debut against a guy who's 6'6". I mean, that's a tall ask, no pun intended. At 9,300, we have Brendan Allen. We did have Phil Hawes, and we are lucky. We are real lucky to get Brendan Allen. Phil Hawes is incredibly sus. Now, I didn't think that Phil Hawes was going to lose. Brendan Allen just seems like a safer bet. And I say safer bet, but not a safer play, because at this price tag, he's already burned us before. And against somebody like Sam Alvey, who's going to stick around for the whole fight, he's going to stay in his face for the whole 15 minutes, or at least be there. So it's going to be hard for him to capture any finishing upside, and that's why I'm going to stay off of Brendan Allen at this price. I do expect him to win. He should beat Sam Alvey. Sam Alvey has looked abysmal for the last few years, but I don't expect him to score over 100 DraftKings points. So the pick for me is Brendan Allen by decision. At 9,200, we have Rosa. He's fighting Steven Peterson this week. Now, there are things that I love, and there are things that I hate about Rosa. You probably feel the same way. I love the pressure he fights with. I love the amount of strikes that he's throwing. I love that he's opportunistic and he's looking for the finish. What I hate is how often he gets knocked down. If you watch this show, if you listen or watch any other shows, you're going to hear that Rosa is notoriously chinny, but it's not just made up. It's a real thing. He's been knocked down, not even knocked out, but knocked down in 7 of his last 9 fights. So I don't really trust him at this price. And Steven Peterson, he's not great, but he's tough, and he'll probably stick around for the whole 15 minutes, kind of like Sam Alvey and Brendan Allen's situation. I don't think Rosa is going to get the finish in this spot either. And with his chin being as suspect as it is, Steven Peterson doesn't need to land heavy to get a big reaction or a knockdown, which will steal a round. So I could actually see this fight going either way. I do expect it to go to decision, so for that reason, I'm probably not targeting this fight. But if you are targeting this fight, I don't think it's a bad idea to go with Steven Peterson, just because, again, I don't expect him to get finished, and Rosa is chinny. So even if Steven Peterson wins a decision and he scores a knockdown at his price tag, you're looking at a solid DK score. So Steven Peterson is, I guess, my lean in this fight from a DraftKings perspective, but I don't think I'd be targeting this one either way. We've got Denise Bondar. He's making his UFC debut. He comes in at 9,100 and he's fighting Malcolm Gordon this week. I expect him to be one of the highest owned fighters on the slate this week, and it's because he gives you what you want from a DraftKings perspective. He's got strong takedowns, submission upside, and Malcolm Gordon hasn't looked great in the UFC. I expect Bondar to pick up the win here in his debut, and I expect him to score a lot of DraftKings points along the way. After a first or second round finish, maybe with a few takedowns throughout, he scores over 100 points and you'll want him in your lineup. So the pick for this fight is Denise Bondar inside the distance, and we're going to be building some lineups later in the video so you can stick around, and he's going to be one of our core pieces. Shavkat Rakhmonov, he's fighting Carlston Harris this week in what should be a wild fight. Rakhmonov has looked great in his 2 UFC fights. He's undefeated, and I expect a lot of the field to get here on Saturday. At 9,000, he's not even close to the most expensive fighter on the slate, so seems like solid value. On the other side of this, you have Carlston Harris. He's tricky in his own right, throws very awkward strikes, and he has an opportunistic submission game. So this one's actually tougher than I think the line indicates. These guys are unranked, but they're both crazy talented and could probably hang with some of the top 15 and beyond in this division. And it's funny because I remember watching Shavkat Rakhmonov's last fight and thinking, I can't wait until this guy fights again so that I could bet him. And I thought the same thing about Carlston Harris. I can't wait until this guy fights again so that I could bet him. So like a Hulkamania shirt, I'm torn, brother. I think the line's a bit wide. I think it's much easier to lock in somebody at 9,000 than it is to lock in somebody much lower in the salary. So because of the way that the line is shaken out, because of the way that the pricing is, I'm going to pick Carlston Harris here from a DraftKings perspective this week. My mind may change later in the week, but for right now, for the first look, I'm taking Carlston Harris to win over Shavkat Rakhmonov. At 8,900, we've got Miles Johns. He's going to be fighting John Castaneda this week. I feel like this is an easy lock. This fight seems like a mismatch, and it's funny because when I was looking on Tapology, it showed their worldwide ranking, and it was right around the same. So maybe it is good matchmaking, but I would expect Miles Johns to be fighting better competition at this point. John Castaneda hasn't looked great in the UFC. He has the first round knockout over Eddie Wineland, and forgive me if I'm not super impressed by that, but I don't expect him to win rounds here against Miles Johns, and we also know that Johns carries power late into fights, so he could score knockdowns. He might even score a knockout, which probably unlikely against somebody like Castaneda, who is very tough, but I think that Miles Johns is just going to be better everywhere. I expect him to win, and he might score right around this 80 to 7 and he might score around 80 points in a decision victory. But if these fights are as close as they look on paper, we might see a lot of decisions, and Miles Johns at 8,900 just seems like a really safe play, even if he does only score you 85 points. So the pick for me for this fight is Miles Johns. I don't think that he's going to finish it. I think it's Miles Johns by decision. At 8,800, we've got Sean Strickland, one half of our main event this week. He's fighting Jack Hermansen, and this looks like a good spot for Sean Strickland in my opinion. I expect Strickland to win by decision in this spot, but land a ton of strikes in the process. I don't see him looking to grapple much just because of how dangerous Jack Hermansen's submission game is, but he does throw a ton of strikes, as you can see on the screen there. He's throwing a ton of strikes. He's scoring a good amount of DraftKings points, just like he did against Uriah Hall. I expect more of the same this time around. This fight will probably look a lot like the fight between Hermansen and Vettori, where both men were throwing a ton, but the more damaging strikes, I think, are going to be coming from Sean Strickland instead of Jack Hermansen. So I think both of them will have success, but it's going to be more apparent when Sean lands, who's got the power advantage. I like Sean Strickland's style. He's always pressing forward with simple but effective strikes, and he's not throwing a ton of kicks, but his boxing is very consistent. And we know he's durable. We know he's got cardio, and he just loves to fight. So Sean Strickland at 8,800 seems like a great play. Seems like a lock because he has 5 rounds to work with. And if you're playing cash games, you'll definitely want to stack this up because Jack Hermansen's probably going to score around 60-ish points, just like he did last time against Marvin Vettori. A solid floor at his price. Moving on, we've got Alexis Davis at 8,700. Ain't no way I'm going to be paying this much for Alexis Davis. I do expect her to win, but I don't see her scoring a ton of points. She's 1-4 in her last 5, and she hasn't looked good in years. Even the fight against Sabina Mazo, she did win, but Mazo seems to struggle with physicality, and somebody like Alexis Davis, you would assume that she wins that fight. And her opponent this week, Stoliarenko, is kind of a one-trick pony, right? If she can't implement that judo and get that armbar, I don't think that she's going to win this fight. And I think that Alexis Davis is enough of a veteran to not get caught by something like that. So she's probably going to win, but I don't expect her to score a ton of points, so I'm going to be staying away from this. But if I had to give you a pick, it'd be Alexis Davis by decision. Punahele Soriano, he's our co-main event. He's fighting Nick Maximov, and Puna is the favorite here, and I'm sure a lot of the field is going to get here to try to capture that knockout upside, but if he doesn't get the knockout early, I expect him to lose. He kind of got exposed in his last fight against Brendan Allen, where he gassed out, but even when he was fresh, he landed on Brendan Allen, and he couldn't really hurt him. So once he was fatigued, the strikes were nothing. They weren't effective. On the other side of this, you got Nick Maximov, who's going to have a massive grappling advantage, and I think that's what will lead to him winning this fight. If he can secure a few takedowns, Puna will gas, Maximov will secure a ton of control time, and he'll get the decision win. Even in these decisions that he is winning, and I'll show you Nick Maximov when we get down there in the pricing, he's still scoring a decent amount of points. Puna has the knockouts over Dusko Todorovic, he's got the knockout over Pashota, but Dusko, we know he keeps his chin way up in the air, and Pashota, he's not really UFC caliber, so when he did go up against somebody like Brendan Allen, he didn't really have much success. And you can see no knockdowns, no takedowns, very little control time, so he wasn't even dominating in the clinch. So if he doesn't score a knockout early, I don't expect him to be able to hang with Nick Maximov, especially if this fight hits the ground. So the pick for this fight is Nick Maximov by decision. At 8,500, we've got Hakeem Dawodu. He's fighting Mike Trizano this week. I'm not looking to target this fight. Both of these guys tend to go to decision. We look at his last couple of fights, he tends to go to decision. And I think Mean Hakeem kind of scammed us. I think Mean Hakeem tricked the public into thinking that he was some big puncher in the division, but it hasn't really shown itself. I think he is solid enough and fights with enough tenacity to be able to beat mid-level competition in this weight class, but I don't expect him to start putting guys out, and I don't think that he's going to finish somebody like Mike Trizano either. I'm leaning toward Mean Hakeem to pick up the win this week, but I'm not looking to target this fight just because of the limited upside. Dawodu's got how many takedowns in his UFC career? None. He has none. No takedowns, right? So the upside is very limited. He's going to want to stand and bang as best as he can, and Mike Trizano is probably going to oblige, but I don't think that either of these men are going to score a ton of points, considering that the fight's probably going to go the distance and there's not going to be a whole lot of grappling involved. At 8,400, you've got Philip Rowe. Philip Rowe's my boy. Philip Rowe is the man. I took him last time out. Very happy that I took him. It was looking dicey. It was looking real dicey when he was getting taken down, but on the feet, he's got some power and he's got some clean, crisp boxing. And I think that we actually see another knockout for him in this spot. We all know by now, Jason Witt is chinny. He was knocked out in 16 seconds against Matt Semmelsberger. He was finished in 48 seconds against Takashi Sato. The strongest part of Philip Rowe's game is that boxing, and I think that's going to be very clear on Saturday night. I do worry about Rowe's takedown defense just because we know that Witt is a strong wrestler. We saw what was happening to Philip Rowe in his last fight, but if Witt can't get the finish, I expect Rowe to just make his way back up to his feet, get back at striking range, and piece him up. And we have to mention Philip Rowe is going to have over a 10-inch reach advantage in this spot. So he's going to be able to hit Jason Witt wherever he is, catch him on his way in. I expect a knockout here. The pick is Philip Rowe inside the distance. At 8,300, we have Tresean Gore. He's making his UFC debut. He's fighting Brian Battle. This is the true Ultimate Fighter finale. I think Tresean Gore, especially at 8,300, is probably going to be one of the most popular plays this week. He's got serious power on the feet. If he wins the fight, it's probably going to be by way of knockout, but it's hard for me to not like Brian Battle in this spot. Tresean Gore has been out for a while. Brian Battle's technically already got his UFC debut out of the way, and Brian Battle, he's got a little El Cucuy in him. He's got a little Tony in him. And the reason why I say that is because if you watch the guy fight, he's got some unorthodox movement. He's got a funky way about him, and he's very tough, and he finds ways to win fights late. And I think those are some intangible factors about guys that come around every so often. And I think that Bryan Battle is one of those guys. I think that Bryan Battle is probably going to be in the UFC for a while and beat a lot of guys throughout his career. And Tresean Gore, I know that Bryan Battle isn't exactly a huge veteran, but Tresean Gore, he has 3 professional fights. I think that the less traditional style of Bryan Battle is going to give him trouble. It's hard to get somebody to recreate that style for you in the gym, so I think he might have some trouble with that. And honestly, going back to the 3 pro fights, if he loses this fight and then say loses another UFC fight, well, then maybe they don't sign him, and then he goes and cuts his teeth with a different promotion like LFA or Eagle FC. Eagle FC, I know they're hiring. So the pick for me is Bryan Battle. I think he finds the finish here. I think at his price point, he's one of the best plays on the slate. Give me Bryan Battle this week. At 8,200, we have Marc-Andre Barrio. He is fighting Chitty Bang Bang this week, and I like power bar. I feel like his forward pressure, his solid chin, he's got really good work in the clinch. I feel like all that stuff's going to serve him very well this week. And he's looked good recently, especially after moving camps, so I expect to see the best version of him this Saturday. Now, his upside is a little limited because he's typically not looking for takedowns. On top of that, he's normally just getting his work done in the clinch. That slows down the pace of the fight, so he tends to go to a decision. But at this price, you don't need 100 points for him to be viable. So Marc-Andre Barrio, by decision, he probably scores 75 to 85 points, and that's good enough for me. And on the other side of this, you got Chidi Jokuani, who's making his UFC debut, and he could win this fight with his speed, because I do expect him to be the faster fighter during the striking exchanges, but he may not have the power to put Marc-Andre away. On top of that, when you look at Jokuani's losses, all of them are either by way of submission or ground and pound for the most part. So if Marc-Andre can find himself on top like he did in the Azaitar fight, Chitty could be in big trouble. So Marc-Andre Barrio at this price point, 8,200. Again, we got to get 8,200 to 8,000 right in most cases, and I think Marc-Andre is the way to go there. Now below 8,000, again, Bryan Battle. I just think that the unorthodox movement, the kicking game, and just being able to find ways to win is going to make all the difference this week, and I think it's going to make all the difference moving forward. I'm buying that Bryan Battle stock early. With Jason Witt, if he does win, he's going to score a decent amount of points. It's not a terrible play, but at the same time, you're going to feel silly if you played a guy who was at a 10.5-inch reach disadvantage and got knocked out. You'd say, well, how would I not see that coming? Mike Trizano, again, I expect it to go to decision. If he scores anything like this, I'm really not interested. Nick Maximov is going to, again, have a big grappling advantage in this spot. If he's able to secure 2 rounds of control time like he did in his last fight and get nearly 100 points coming in at 7,600, give me that all day. Stoliarenko, I'm not really interested in playing her this week. She hasn't had a lot of success at this level, and I don't expect her to beat somebody like Alexis Davis. Jack Hermansen at 7,400. I'm not going to be getting here in terms of just playing him by himself, but I'll definitely be stacking this up for cash games. John Castaneda, I'm really not interested in playing Castaneda. I think that Miles Johns is a much stronger play. Carlston Harris, I love him this week. I expect him to get the job done. I expect him to surprise a lot of people. Carlston Harris is just a tricky guy. I'm liking the tricky ones this week. Malcolm Gordon, Steve Peterson, Sam Alvey. I'm really not looking to play any of these guys. If anything, it'd be Steven Peterson. Steven Peterson's a maybe, just because, again, that chin of Julian Rosa. I have an NFT of Julian Rosa getting sent to the Shadow Realm. Maybe I'll play it. Maybe I'll play it. And he has fights where he's thrown a lot of strikes, like 102, 115, 87 to a lesser extent, but we know that Julian Rosa throws a lot of strikes as well, so that might cause Steven Peterson to increase his output also. So if he comes in over 100, landing over 100 strikes on Julian Rosa, that's probably good night, Irene. Yeah, this is Julian Rosa getting sent to the moon. I don't think it's going to play any audio for you, but we'll just take a look. I mean, it doesn't make him chinny. They got knocked out by that. That was a pretty clean strike, but it's also not a good thing that happened to him. So it's hard guy to trust. That's all I'm saying. And then Dino Marquez. Listen, I don't think he's a bad shout at 6,800. This guy's 6'6". He knows how to grapple. If he gets to your back, it's going to be a problem. And on top of that, he's 36 years old. He's had his UFC fights, been there, done that. The other guy's making his debut, could have those jitters. Just a high price point to pay for somebody who we haven't really seen perform on this stage yet. So Dino Marquez, I wouldn't be mad at you if you thought to get here. So those are my thoughts for the fights. I'm going to put together a couple lineups for a quick cash game lineup just because it will be simple. We throw in stack the main event, 8,400 left to work. Let's go down here and grab somebody that we like Brian Battle. I'll even stay in this mid-range here with Marc-Andre, grab Phil Rowe. Now I can go all the way up here if I wanted to. Now I can get somebody like Denise Bondar at 9,100. So this is probably what you would see in your cash games. Now I'm going to put together what I think would be a good tournament lineup. All right, I like Bondar. Also like Sean Strickland. Yeah, I think you have to take a shot on somebody down here to get different, like Carlston Harris. We're looking at somebody like Brian Battle. Looking at somebody like, Jason Witt. Just because, again, if he does win, he's going to score a ton of points. And in GPPs, it's all about getting different. You might feel better about Philip Rowe, but if Jason Witt wins, there you go. And then you can come grab somebody like Miles Johnson. If you don't feel great about this, which I'd understand, and you want to come down from somebody like Jason Witt to go after Nick Maximov, that makes a ton of sense too. But that'll do it for the first look. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. That way I can bring more of this to you.